So let's talk a little bit more about contradictions. I can come up with an entire list and, give you point by point why each contradiction is incorrect and why it's really just a difference and not a contradiction. But it's good for you to know how to do this on your own. So, hey, y'all, it's me, Cindy Fessler, your fellow Christian warrior, here to help you know more so you can share more and grow more of God's kingdom. So, if you haven't done so already, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. And also, please make sure to share this video, if you would, with friends and family. Let's get this information out there so we can grow God's kingdom. So here's an article from J. Warner Wallace. He's a Dateline featured cold case homicide detective. He's a popular national speaker and best-selling author. And, obviously this guy was a cold case detective. So he has heard a few stories in his life. And I think he gives, he's a Christian, and he gives an excellent set of rules to evaluate these alleged Bible contradictions for yourself. Okay, so when you come across one, you don't have to go, oh my goodness, what did Cindy say about this? Or what did Josh McDowell say about that? You can evaluate these on your own. I've been slowly working, this is what he says. I've been slowly working through a number of alleged Bible contradictions and difficulties here at coldcasechristianity.com. That's his website. Using simple investigative principles I've adapted from my casework as a cold case homicide detective. So here's a short list of the rules I typically use when evaluating eyewitness statements, right? He had to know how to do that because when he was interviewing eyewitnesses, same kind of thing, right? Stories would come up that were conflicting. The first 10 principles are derived directly from my casework related to homicide investigations. How cool is that? Modified to address the biblical narratives. And I've added 3 rules specifically applicable to the study of the New and Old Testament. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm so excited. So rule 1, maintain a fair attitude. When you begin to read the Bible and examine what it says, it's important to start off with a fair attitude before you jump up and call it a liar. Take a second to examine what it says fairly. Rule number 2, examine the statement in its context. Remember, any text taken out of context is a pretext. We've heard that before, right? An effort or strategy intended to conceal something or prove a point missing in the text. So never read a single Bible verse. Always read the entire chapter and all the other accounts related to that narrative. Number 3, recognize the perspective of each of the eyewitnesses. Every witness offers a view of the event from his or her unique perspective. I'm not just talking about geographic or locational perspectives here, but I'm also talking about personal worldview, history, and experience. Every witness brings to the crime, right? All these different things. All witness testimony is colored by a personal interest, biases, and aspirations, concerns, and idiosyncrasies of the eyewitness. We've got to be careful not to confuse differences in perspective with biblical error. Rule number 4, consider the capacity and viewpoint of the witness. When I described an event to my daughter when she was still very young, I often described it with language relative to her perspective on the world, right? She's a little kid. The Bible was also written from the perspective of common humans standing on the surface of the planet. Rule number 5, let the witness clarify their own statement. Most modern translations of the Bible include scripture references in the margin of the Bible to help us make sense of difficult passages. Allow the Bible to explain itself by reading these additional passages. Rule number 6, differentiate between complementary and conflicting accounts. When comparing 2 eyewitness accounts, I'm more concerned about unresolvable contradictions than complementary details. In fact, I have come to expect some degree of resolvable variation in true, reliable eyewitness accounts. Rule number 7, don't confuse imprecision with error. The Bible was written at a time when the culture commonly used general figures or descriptions to discuss more specific issues. This is particularly true when the Bible discusses numbers. As a matter of cultural device, specific numbers are often rounded off. Rule number 8, identify the common details of parallel accounts. When interviewing multiple eyewitnesses, I listen carefully for common features in their testimony. In every witness observation, some details are more important than others. Some perspectives of the event stick out in the mind of the observers more than others. Common details are often the most important to the account, and I expect there to be variation in the ancillary information. Just makes sense. Rule number 9, remember a description is different than an approval. Guys, this is so important. Sometimes critics of the Bible, or critics of Christianity in general, point to an evil or corrupt situation described in the Bible. How many times do we hear this, right? And they use this to argue God or Christianity approves of that situation or is the source of the evil. Remember, just because a biblical author writes about something, this does not mean God condones it or supports it. A condition described in the lives of biblical characters isn't always a condition God would want for those same biblical figures. Rule number 10, assess the opportunity for collusion. When people have the opportunity to line their statements, yet still refuse to do so, I know I'm getting the nuanced observation I need to properly investigate the case. The gospel authors in the early church certainly had the opportunity to eliminate all of these alleged contradictions, but they refused to do so. As a result, we can have even more confidence in the reliability of these accounts. They display the level of variation I would expect to see if they were true. Reliable eyewitness descriptions. Reliable eyewitness descriptions. All right, here's some bonus principles. Rule number 11, don't fret copyist variants. So this gentleman, Jay Wallace, he says he's addressed these variations that we see in biblical copies, copies that we presently have in some of his other articles. And once again, his website is coldcasechristianity.com. And I also talk about those in some of my other videos. So check out both. There's good information there. He goes on to say we can trust our scriptures for several reasons. However, even in spite of these variations, so none of these variations change the theology or content of the Bible. In addition, the variations existing in the ancient manuscripts can be found in the margins, right? We talked about that, the margins of the modern translations. So you can investigate them for yourself to see how important or unimportant they really are. The vast majority of these variations are single letter or number variations, and the copyists were extremely honest in the way they transmitted these errors down through the ages. As a result, the variations come down to us in complete honesty. Rule number 12, don't treat every Old Testament citation as an Old Testament quote. There are often times when the New Testament writers cite a passage from the Old Testament to show a prophecy is being fulfilled. Some of the citations are not perfect verbatim quotes from the Old Testament. Our modern translations have added the quotation marks to the New Testament scriptures. The original manuscripts did not contain the punctuation, paragraph delineation, or chapter division. The New Testament authors often paraphrased Old Testament passages without intending them to be verbatim quotes. Just makes sense. Rule number 13, remember who's boss. As we wrap up this assessment of simple rules for reading the scriptures, we've got to remember the Bible describes the work of God here on planet Earth and the history of God's people. How simple is that? Sometimes we'll read something in the Old Testament and wonder how God could act in such a way. Sometimes the God of the Old Testament can seem pretty harsh. Critics look at certain passages and argue that judgment seen in God's nature in the Old Testament contradicts the mercy seen in God's nature in the New Testament. Wow, that's profound, right? But we need to read the scriptures carefully and remember, God alone is God. He knows the end from the beginning, and he is the source of all morality. He gets to make decisions over life and death, even when we don't understand all of the details. You know, I've used these simple principles repeatedly. That's what he says. He's used these repeatedly to evaluate alleged contradictions related to the number of angels at the tomb of Jesus, the number of women who visited the tomb, the variations in the wording of the sign over Jesus' cross, and the difference between the genealogies of Jesus. I hope these rules will help you begin to work through the apparent discrepancies as you encounter them. You can join his Cold Case Christian community, which is really fun. You can check that out on his website. And he also has a book, Cold Case Christianity, a homicide detective investigates the claims of the gospel. Well, hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. I am so excited that you stuck to it to the end, and I appreciate that. And please do smack that subscribe button. Check out the next video.